What is up, guys? Rick Kakis over there. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we have what I believe is a really interesting discussion about Pinnacle Weapons, some of the most powerful weapons throughout Destiny 2's history, and whether or not Bungie should change them. Well, let's get started. So, there's no way around it, Pinnacle Weapons have made their mark within Destiny 2. They include some of the best PvP weapons like the Revoker right now, the Recluse SMG, and PvE weapons such as, well, when autoloading was a thing, honestly, the loaded question was pretty amazing, but so was the Mountaintop, and the Mountaintop still is a phenomenal PvE and PvP choice. And let's not forget the Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten. These weapons have absolutely warped metas around them. They have been so important and so desirable throughout Destiny 2's history. And something interesting is happening to, frankly, all of them, and that is they're all being sunset, because we haven't had a new Pinnacle weapon since Shadowkeep, and everything from Shadowkeep backwards is being sunset, which means they will no longer be able to be infused past the infusion cap of this current season. So that means when Destiny 2 Beyond Light, the expansion, comes out, you won't be able to infuse your Mountaintop to the new endgame maximum light level. Now, you can certainly still use these Pinnacle weapons in the Crucible, and I have no doubt they will still see a lot of play within, for example, quick play. But if you want to use them in the new raid, in whatever the new endgame activity is, in Iron Banner, in Trials of Osiris, places where light level matters, you will not be able to without a substantial disadvantage for them being under light. And this has made quite a few people upset, because the way to acquire Pinnacle weapons is through a usually pretty substantial quest. Like the Luna's Howl especially takes people days if not weeks to acquire. The Mountaintop, especially the original one, just required so many different grenade launcher kills in PvP. Like, these were not easy to get. Even really hardcore players had to spend a considerable amount of time acquiring these Pinnacle weapons. So it was an absolute journey to get these guns. People spent so much time doing so, and then they're being told, hey, that weapon you spent a month getting, yeah, you're not going to be able to use it in Iron Banner. So people are understandably not happy with that decision. In fact, the idea behind sunsetting as an entire concept, not just involving Pinnacles, has, for a lot of players, been met with disdain. But is there a way to make these players happy? Is there a way to still utilize our beloved and iconic Pinnacle weapons in expansions going forward? And I think there is, and that solution is to make them exotic. Now, might sound a little bit crazy, but it's actually been done before. Back with Destiny 1, specifically in the Age of Triumph, Bungie went back and actually turned raid primary weapons into exotics. The reason being is because originally you could get like the adept version of those weapons within the prestige modes, and those had elemental burns as primary weapons, which wasn't done otherwise and wasn't done after the fact. Bungie moved away from that. So their solution was to reintroduce them as exotics. Then they could have elemental burns as primaries, and you could still utilize them in that capacity, but obviously they're rebalanced because they're exotic. Like, just by making something exotic, you're lowering its power level substantially, because it means you can't combine them with other powerful exotic weapons. So could this same solution be utilized on Pinnacles? If I'm thinking about some of the Pinnacle weapons out there, the Luna's Howl, Not Forgotten, the Mountaintop especially, if we turn those into an exotic, they would actually be pretty balanced. One of the reasons that Bungie is letting all of the Pinnacle weapons sunset, and one of the reasons they don't do Pinnacle weapons anymore, was because they constantly created balance issues. But if you make them exotic, and you can't use For example, a Recluse in PvE without also giving up the ability to use an Anarchy or a Whisper of the Worm, is it suddenly much more balanced? And I think it is. The other question is, would it be worth utilizing the exotic version of Pinnacle Weapons? And again, I think it might be. Like, the Mountaintop and most of the other Pinnacles are basically exotics. They essentially are legendaries that have exotic perks. That's why they're so darn powerful. If you turn the Mountaintop exotic, I think it would still see play. Heck, I would probably use it, honestly. And then you also solve the sunsetting issue, because remember, when it comes to sunsetting, exotics are exempt. They can be infused forever. There's going to be no cap on exotics. So then you have all of the people who put the work into getting these pinnacles also able to utilize them in activities going forward. And as for acquiring the exotic version, if you have the original legendary weapon, you simply go to the Cryptarch or whoever, and then you can get the exotic version. I wouldn't mind both versions existing in the game. The legendary version that obviously has sunset, and then the exotic version that is infusion proof. And I really feel like this is a solution that would make a lot of players happy. And again, this isn't pie in the sky thinking. It was done before in Destiny 1, and in that case, those weapons were even weaker than Pinnacles. Like, they didn't necessarily have super unique perks. The Fatebringer was just really, really good. And it was often still worth it to use an exotic Fatebringer. Like, I found myself doing that quite a bit. And so, if this concept is introduced, and if it works, we find people are using these Pinnacle weapons still as their exotic versions, but because they're exotic, they're not as oppressive, and they're not taking up such large portions of the meta, well, then you kind of have an excuse to reintroduce Pinnacle weapons, right? You could even cut out the middleman and not have the legendary version. Like, you just essentially plan a Pinnacle weapon, you just make it exotic from the get-go. And the advantages to that, you'll notice the Pinnacle weapons aren't that crazy looking, whereas the exotics are absolutely wild, and there's like moving parts and they do the craziest things. I mean, think of the Ruinous Effigy. That's absolutely wild, right? The Luna's Howl feels just powerful, but certainly not quite on the exotic level, right? And that might create some problems. You could potentially have a new rarity. I think that's just too much work, however, but you would save a lot of development time not having to create an overwhelmingly crazy exotic. You just create an exotic in the knowledge that, yeah, this is kind of a Pinnacle weapon, but it's being made exotic for balancing reasons. And I think a lot of players would understand. I don't think you'd have a ton of players getting super upset because this doesn't feel like an exotic. They would understand that this was kind of supposed to be a Pinnacle weapon, but it's a way of reintroducing them in a more balanced state. And then you could start having Pinnacle Quests again. Like, we haven't had Pinnacle weapons in forever, in years, and they're still making their mark on the meta. Is it time to reintroduce those in a different way by making them exotic? I really do think this is a concept that Bungie should explore, and if you agree with me, I hope you take the time to support this video. That would certainly help Bungie acknowledge this. Guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.